betray the law!
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, where we decide if remake or rebooted movies should have been remade or rebooted. This episode's going to be a little bit different. We are missing Xavier. He had some personal stuff to take care of, so he should be back next week. So with me as always is Dustin. How you doing, Dustin?
Hey, doing well.
So this week we are doing the 2000 AD comic character Judge Dredd. We're doing the 1995 Stallone movie and the 2012 Karl Urban movie, the new classic. Dustin, I know you're a pretty big Judge Dredd fan. I know you've got all the 1/6 figures and all the action figures and stuff.
Yeah. Heavy into Dredd.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Dredd head. I love the 2012 movie. That was one of the last things I did before I moved from the Sacramento area with my Sacramento friends before moving to San Francisco just shortly before I met you. So it holds a pretty big space in my heart. So I love that movie. So it's really easy for me to say that it's a better movie, but after going back through and watching the Stallone one, I was actually surprised. So I'm actually really excited now to talk about it after rewatching these movies.
I would agree. Honestly, I had seen the Stallone Dredd movie several times, but it had been like a pretty big gap since the last time I watched it. And watching it for the podcast, I kind of had a little bit of a different lens, and I would say I enjoyed it much more than I expected to. Honestly, I think this is a movie that people love to shit on, and I don't know. I couldn't go to that place with it. I was impressed by several elements of the Stallone Dredd movie.
I had the same kind of feeling. So this was a movie that I had seen several times during my childhood. Most of the time I would be on like TNT or TBS or whatever, and I'd see the end. It was one of those movies where I'd always come in at the part where he's breaking back into the city. So I don't really remember the beginning and the middle as much. So going through and watching it this time, seeing it for everything, I enjoyed it. I also, like, in the last few years, the only kind of interaction I've had is I love How Did This Get Made? You kind of turned me on to that podcast a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's great.
It's one of my favorite episodes, and I've listened to it 2 or 3 times, so I was just expecting to just watch this like piece of shit movie, but I don't want to say it was a piece of shit movie. So
I wouldn't say it is a piece of shit movie. I saw this movie in theaters when I was young, and I loved it. Do you remember when they had like books like that had like a bunch of stills from movies in them?
Yeah.
And like they would like have like how the special effects were done and like
just
all the like sketches and all that shit.
Stuff.
Yeah, and I had that book
all
for
the
this
concept
movie
art for the costumes and the different fittings. Like you might see like slightly different costume.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember like poring over that, and then honestly, the movies what turned me on to the comics. And then I, tracked down a bunch of the back issues and all the 2000 AD stuff and kind of got into that. And that was really what showed me the differences between like the 2000 AD comic book Dredd character versus what we got on screen with the Stallone movie. The Stallone movie doesn't really touch on the same kind of like satire of, America or like this bleak American future. I thought for what it was as a sci-fi dystopian future kind of movie, it's not bad.
No,
it's pretty good.
So going into this episode, what do you think are some of the things we should be talking about? I definitely think obviously we need to talk about Dredd himself. I think possibly we should definitely talk about the universe, the world.
I think, the world is important because I think we get 2 very different, not only mega city ones, right, but just like the overall climate, like what it's like on the street in that city and in the world. I'd like to touch on just the aesthetic, the design, what these 2 different interpretations look like.
I'd also kind of like to talk about, I know you love the character Judge Death. And some of those other weird judge characters. I think at the end of this, after we talk about them, I want to have kind of a conversation about which one do you think fits the comic book more. Like, which one do you think like these more obscure, weird characters could pop up in? So I think
that sounds great.
Everything we need to talk about. So I like to summarize the movies really quick with the 1995 Stallone version. Kind of starts off with it's weird that with this movie being Judge Dredd, he's not the character that starts off. We don't really see him until about 10-15 minutes in. You start off with Rob Schneider's character, which I don't remember what his name is. And
also like the only Dredd you get, like the pure Dredd doing Dredd stuff, like being a cop, happens in that first sequence.
In the first few minutes, and then he's a criminal, so it's kind of weird. Rob Schneider is pretty much the only thing I'd say is really bad about this movie, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's him. It's just
he's not bad. His character
he's playing the
is
character.
awful.
And
Yeah.
Dredd. Yeah, he's just a whiny guy.
I live here.
The beginning was the beginning was really bad because he just got off some like stint from hacking robots and ATM machines. They're like, oh, we're relocating you to Heavenly Haven. So he's thinking, he flies over and he sees this place that has like this really nice pool,
a swimming pool on the roof. Yeah,
people, he's like, that's got to be Heavenly Haven. It's like, why do you think you're going to this really nice place right out of prison? Like,
well, yeah. After 6 months in the ISO cubes at the Aspen penal colony, that's where it is. And actually, that is true to the comics. There is a prison in Aspen.
But yeah, that didn't make sense. But he shows up and there's like this. I think they call it a block war.
Block War is also ripped straight from the pages of the comic. Block War is a thing in the 2000 AD Mega City 1.
James Remar from like Dexter and Sex and the City and he's one of those guys.
A bunch of great stuff.
He's one of those guys who you just see as like a henchman or a villain at the beginning of the movie. He's in The Phantom.
He's great.
And
I like
he's a
Remar.
great character actor. He's just in things. He's one of those guys you're like, oh, it's that guy. So he starts off with it. He has a bit part at the beginning. He's leading the gang, and for whatever reason, he sees Rob Schneider's character and wants him to participate in the block war. I think it's Diane Lane's character, Judge Hershey, is kind of running it. Dredd shows up, and he kind of like...
She's like first on scene. She's waiting for backup. Yeah. She calls in backup, and it's just Judge Dredd.
And he kind of like shits on her a little bit, where he's like, the lethal range of this weapon is 300 or 200 meters. You're 300 meters. Why are you still here? Kind of thing. And
that was the other thing I really didn't like was this is like a super smug Dredd. Like, oh, the lethal range is 200 meters. What are you doing down there? Like all that crap.
Once Stallone got involved, he wrote Rocky, and he is an Oscar-winning
which is a great movie, right?
Writer,
Rocky's amazing.
But this
is not Rocky.
All of his movies, he likes to come back in and punch up the script. And,
you got to punch it up.
And this one, he wanted it to be kind of funny, which I don't think.
Did you think
funny.
I think he really punched up Rocky.
Yeah,
because punching and boxing.
He saves the day. He kills the gang, and you see a bunch of his like technology, and this is stuff that was pretty cool. Like he had the voice.
The Lawgiver was really cool.
The voice gun, and it worked really well. He killed a bunch of guys really fast. He gets pulled into the office by. What's the main judge name? Judge
Fargo. Chief Justice Fargo.
Yeah. So he's kind of like, that was a bit excessive. It's extreme. And kind of tells him it's like, you're too by the book. Like, you're a great judge, but you're too by the book. And then he wants him to teach the academy. And there's this little joke. And he's like, what is it? Unarmed combat or marksmanship? And he's like, ethics. And he has this weird scene with like the teenagers, gives this big speech. And Diane Lane's character was like, you'd think, the way you talk about this, you'd think like none of them are going to survive. And he's like, most people don't, which is true. Like, it makes sense. Like, by the end of this, almost every judge in the movie dies.
Oh, yeah. So it's hard being a judge, man.
So right away, it splits back into Armand Assante, who plays Rico, who is his brother / clone. And I remember watching this movie as a kid thinking, these guys look nothing alike. Why are they calling them clones? But I guess like the DNA's been manipulated, and they're more brothers than clones of each other.
Yeah, they're close enough for the purposes of a weird sci-fi genetic cloning experiment to make. I think it was to make like the perfect judges, right?
Judges,
like,
yep.
Yeah. So that all is well and good. I mean, I accepted that. I was way more accepting of it this time around.
Too.
I think I would agree.
I always made fun of it before. Asante as Rico actually did a pretty good Stallone impression. Like there's certain things that he said where he kind of got the same kind of tone and inflection that Stallone got.
Yeah, he's like supposed to be like a dark version of Dredd, right? Like
exactly.
It worked. It worked fine for me. That wasn't my gripe with the movie at all. I don't know.
So he kills a couple people, and because they are clones of each other or clones of Fargo, he has the same DNA.
Yeah.
So they basically, and he's wearing Judge Dredd's badge, so Judge Dredd
cannot be replicated.
Yep. No. Well, that's one of the big things that I had.
No, the big reveal is the gun that it stamps all the bullets with the
DNA, and they didn't know. One of the big problems I had with this movie was right then, there's some amazing future tech, and we'll get into this a little bit more when you go into the world, but they've got flying cars, they've got the gun that each bullet can change. Like, they talk about how this is bullets that can change, so it's not like it switches bullets in the gun to do the explosive rounds. It's like each bullet has all of these things in it. So they've got
Yeah,
all
you
these
just
things.
got to tell the gun what kind of bullet you
And
want,
you've
and then
got
it shoots it.
flying cars. You've got these weird, like when they're in the motorcycle scene, you've got these like holograms that open and close, so vehicles can
the
pass
prototype flying motorcycle that they're
But
working
it wasn't
on,
really a
pretty
pro.
cool.
Like there was a bunch of other ones that worked,
Yeah.
so that was weird that one didn't work. It is what it is.
That's true.
But
that was strange.
no HD displays to be heard. Like that display, like you could not see anything on that camera footage of Dredd killing everyone. It was super.
Well, they make
And
they call it out. They call it the resolution is too low to
Yes,
identify.
they do call it,
him.
but it's like it's just weird that that's even a thing in that world. So he gets convicted of killing these guys. The Judge Fargo decides to step down and ask for a favor to, give Dredd life in the ISO cubes versus.
And he takes the long walk
which
to bring law to the lawless.
that
in the
actually
cursed earth.
bothered me. Like I'm not sure if I'm sure that's part of the comic books, but
It is.
what a shitty life as a judge. So if you're lucky enough to make it to old age.
That's the retirement.
You go out into the world, like you basically go into the wasteland to die, like an Eskimo who's put on like a block of ice and pushed off to sea. Like, and that kind of didn't make sense with the whole Hershey thing. She was like, I have friends outside of work. Like, you could have a life outside of being a judge. It's like, but no, as soon as you retire, you go.
What it does for me in that, it makes it like those that have dedicated their lives to the law, right? Like Dredd has no friends. The law is their religion, Like he's going out into the wasteland to like almost preach the law to these savages out there. So I mean it works within the movie. It's really weird and like it's kind of unsettling and doesn't make a ton of sense. But I think within the context of the movie,
within the context and what ends up happening in the movie later, it needed to happen because it's very convenient that this happened. So
of course.
So once he steps down, it's Judge Griffin takes over, and it turns out he's working with Rico, and he orchestrated all of this stuff. They tell like these cannibals that are out in the desert that this plane's gonna come around. They shoot the plane down and react like they're gonna eat Judge Dredd.
Well, the cannibals are the Angel Gang, which are also characters from the 2000 AD universe, right? So like the Mean Machine Angel, all those characters are pretty iconic, right? Like the Mean Angel especially, and the makeup,
the cyborg guy, right?
The one with the big arm and the headbutt guy, with the dial on his head.
Yeah.
That's a classic character in the Dredd universe. Like, and I thought that costume or costume makeup, whatever
it was great. It was really good.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It looked gross. It was gruesome. It was terrifying, but it looked organic and real.
It looked real. Like I would believe that that guy was in that room.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That was pretty cool. Judge Dredd and Rob Schneider get rescued by Judge Fargo. Fargo ends up getting killed. Judge Dredd and Rob Schneider get back into the city. They immediately go and fight Rico, and they save the day.
There you go.
That's basically the movie in a nutshell. So there were a few scenes that I really want to kind of talk about.
Yeah.
The one I don't remember what her name is, but she was like the Asian scientist. I could not get her character, and I don't know if the actress did. So initially she seemed super annoyed by Rico, like he's just a petulant child. But then she later on seemed like she was really aroused by him. And then when he goes to put his DNA in the machine instead of having Fargo's DNA, she like flips out. She's like, you can't do that. He won't take that. And then Griffin comes and Rico's kind of like, get over it.
Yeah, and there are way grosser ways to put your DNA into a machine.
So Rico, like, he's like, deal with it. And during that time, like when he's like telling Griffin to like deal with it, she like takes off her jacket and is like has like this huge push-up bra and starts showing her cleavage, and she's like, yeah, look at Rico, kind of thing, like really liking him. So her character was really weird and confused me.
Yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense.
And so she just kept switching like whether she liked him or hated him, and then like
I think it was just like whatever was appropriate for the scene, I guess, at the time, or whatever was the most inappropriate for the scene at the time. I don't know where that was coming from at all.
Yeah, so there was just little things like that. Like I liked a lot of little things in the world. I think that didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, there were minor things that didn't make sense. Nothing about this, I think, really jumped out at me and took me out of the movie.
No, like that was the only thing that kind of like I was watching that and like her character didn't make sense to me, but overall, it worked actually. So there was a few.
I think so.
The world
Man, I
did
agree.
Work. Like I wanted to just come into this.
This is one of those movies where I feel like we would fight each other a lot. I'm very surprised that
we're not.
agree on
Yeah.
this.
So I kind of want to, let's say, I guess just go into Judge Dredd himself. So looking at the costume, like his costume, I think is more in line with the comic
books. Very
books.
stylish. It's more in line with the comic books. I would say it's overly stylized, but in a way that I liked.
Except for the boots.
Right?
Those boots had
looked
that weird
a little
heel.
too much like goth boots,
and he couldn't walk
and
in
the
it.
codpiece was unnecessary as well.
Yeah,
like the Dredd
those
in
are
the
the two
comics
things that I wrote down. Codpiece and boots are ridiculous. He can't even walk.
Right, but the shoulder armor looked really cool. It was
The
like
shoulder
a really
armor was cool. The helmet was
new,
cool.
stylish. Yeah, the helmet was cool. It was very sleek. Very It was cool. The bikes looked cool, right? Like
all the vehicles looked really cool. The weapons all were good.
The judge stuff looked. The building, the Hall of Justice or whatever, looked really cool. Like all of the judge gear was consistent, I guess, in the way that it looked.
So
right?
yeah, the costume overall I thought was great. How do you feel about Stallone as Dredd?
Versus Karl Urban or just Stallone as Dredd?
Just how do you feel about, because we'll talk about Karl Urban later, but how do you feel about Stallone as Dredd?
I felt that Stallone as Dredd is just, I felt like I'm just looking at Stallone, you know? Like I can't get past the actor.
Yeah,
you know?
I had
like
the same problem.
I'm seeing Stallone in a Dredd costume. I'm not seeing Judge Dredd.
I had the same, that's the same thing. Like I think it worked for the 90s. And because, 95, 96 was in that era. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger was still doing stuff until about 98. So in the early to mid 90s was when we started seeing like the American action hero on its like decline. But really like Arnold, Schwarzenegger, they all pretty much played the same character every time.
But maybe like, is that what audiences wanted at the time? Like, did you want to see your
I think that was on the tail end of that.
As a different guy? Like, I don't know that. Yeah, it was definitely. I would say it was disappointing.
Yeah, it was just like him yelling his lines like he normally does.
And then also the Dredd that you get in this movie. I mean, he's got his helmet off for 95%
all
of
of
this
it,
movie,
except for like that one scene in the block war.
At the very beginning, the block war at the beginning is the only real Dredd
time that he was judging.
Yeah,
there was one thing that actually bothered me where he was right before he got arrested. So for whatever reason, he's like on the street. Hershey's pulling over somebody who was driving without a license, and he comes down and he's like, "You need help with this?" And then he just takes over the case, and he ends up blows up the car. And I'm like, I know this is an extreme, fascist kind of world. I don't feel like that's something that Dredd would do. But I never really read the comic books or anything, so I'm going to default to your judgment on that. But
no,
I felt that was wrong.
You're just destroying property. Anybody walking by that car could have been killed. Like that's not very consistent.
Yeah.
Like just the destruction of it doesn't matter. Like I feel like in a Dredd universe, that dude would more than likely just end up. He would have killed the guy. Like,
yeah,
he wouldn't have killed the car. He would have killed the guy.
The "I am the law," his yelling of it was pretty good, but it was still just Stallone yelling that line. I did like that scene when Rico was like, why did you judge me? And he's like, you lost your mind, you killed innocents. It was, the price that needed to be paid. He's like, it's against the law. And he's like, and then Rico kind of makes fun of him. And he's like, the law? I did like that interaction. I did like how they interacted, but it was just another Stallone movie. Going into the world, I was really impressed. Like I had to look up some of this stuff because the world is drastically different than the 2012 Dredd. Like this opening crawl says that this is supposed to be like slums and it's a wasteland and everything outside the walls are. There were flying cars. There still seemed to be the ultra rich. There still seemed to be people, and obviously there were the poor and everything like that. But it did seem like their society was still flourishing to an extent.
I would say that this world is more similar to the comics in that, within the walls of the city, there's a functional society. It's governed and kind of policed by a very fascist police force. Like the judges obviously are like the epitome of fascism, right? Like they can just kill you. Like they're the judge, jury, and executioner. But like the aesthetic of it showed a certain amount of prosperity.
It
for
did,
some,
like
right?
having all the flying cars and everything. I was really impressed in general, like how good the special effects were. Like I was expecting it to be terrible.
Totally hold up.
Like this was a couple years, like 3 years before Fifth Element, and the Fifth Element's considered to be like the pinnacle of practical effects, and I thought that this was as good, if not better, in many regards.
And I almost wish we'd had, I do wish we'd had Xavier on this podcast. He's all about that kind of stuff. But I do think it is apparent that there were like craftsmen and women working on the stuff that you see on screen, right? Like the cars look really cool, the buildings look really cool. There's a lot of cool like neon, the holograms that you mentioned.
Yeah, those holograms are cool.
It's all very fleshed out, It looks like a living,
the Wasteland
breathing...
was cool. Like I'm glad that we got a little bit of the Wasteland. Like briefly see the prison colony when Rico breaks out. That scene, oh god, that scene was dumb as hell. Actually, I want to talk about that scene really quick. The warden himself somehow receives a gift for Rico and is like, well, I guess I should go give Rico, this most wanted maximum security guy, his gift. It's like, why are you giving a prisoner a gift?
Yeah, personally, I should give it to him.
Personally, why was this gift not inspected? Because he opens it up and it has Rico's badge, so like, why would you think that it's okay to give him this thing? And then the box turns into the gun, and he like shoots him in the throat, so the guy can't, the warden can't turn off the voice controlled security things.
Those automated
it was just
guns
a dumb
and
scene.
stuff?
That was another scene that I thought was really dumb.
No, that was dumb.
But I did like the clones at the end. I thought that they were really well done. Like I thought they were scary.
They
and
were
creepy.
super gooey. Yeah,
the robot
they were like underdone clones.
I did like the robot a lot, and what was interesting is this robot.
Oh, the robot's amazing.
Was like it stood up like it looked like a robot. Like obviously it was some sort of animatronic robotic prop.
Well, that design of that robot like is directly lifted from the pages. Like it's perfectly executed.
Yeah, I really liked that. I thought it was really cool, and it was scary.
It was terrifying. Like
on that scene when it's like
chilly,
just in the alleyway, and like it just kills like 5 or 6 judges, like nothing.
Those robots are supposed to be just like unstoppable.
So I was out of town this weekend. I was one of my best friends is getting married in a couple weeks, so it was like the bachelor party weekend. 5 guys were watching this movie, and we were all of us sat down expecting to shit on it and just make fun of it, and we just sat there and watched this movie. Like we didn't talk, we didn't say anything. We laughed at some parts. We there was 5 guys fully engaged in this movie that I was expecting to be terrible.
Yeah, it definitely exceeded my expectations for going back through it. So wait, we hit Dredd. We hit what were we talking about? The Dredd one.
We hit Dredd. I don't. I'm looking at my notes, and I really don't see anything. Like I thought it held up. I'm sure we'll think of some more stuff to talk about when we start talking about Dredd with Karl Urban. But all in all, like it was a pretty solid movie for the 90s. It was a Stallone set piece, but overall, like I think it did the character justice.
Yeah, it didn't fail. Oh, justice. No, it didn't fail as a movie. I just when you contrast it with Dredd, 2012 Dredd, is when you see its shortcomings.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair statement.
All right, I think it's time to dive into the 2012 Dredd starring Karl Urban. Just right off the bat, that movie just starts so. Karl Urban narrates.
The movie rips, dude. Right off the bat, yeah, he narrates the intro.
Like his voice,
like 800
was
million people living in the ruin of the old world, and like all that stuff. And then I love when you get that like title shot where like the letters spelling out Dredd appear on the screen in an explosion. It also reminded me that when I saw this movie in theaters, I saw it in 3D. And this is actually one of the very few movies in 3D where I was like, oh, damn, 3D's cool. Like, it was worth it to see in 3D.
I saw it in 3D as well. Yeah, with like the slow-mo scenes and the people getting thrown off the edge of buildings and that minigun scene. Like, there were some pretty cool scenes. Like, it was nothing like, I'm going to have something fly out the screen at you. Like, there's nothing gimmicky about it. It was just a solid 3D movie.
It just worked, yeah. Like, none of it felt hokey. None of it felt forced, It was very, very cool in 3D. Excellent use of 3D. And then, so, the movie kind of takes off. And, like, the first thing you get, I think, is Dredd responding to... it's a chase, right?
Yeah.
He's chasing that van. And you get kind of, you see him like gearing up. He's putting on all his gear, which, if we're talking about Dredd, in this movie, I think
much more tactical
gear, way more tactical. Like it's really just like motorcycle equipment, like the jacket is a motorcycle jacket. He's wearing leather pants. He doesn't have like that huge eagle shoulder pad. Like it's very subtle.
It's got a slight bronzy tint to
yeah,
it.
and it looks like kind of patinaed. Like it's not this super chrome look, Like all of it looks worn.
He's kitted out
and
to go
functional.
and fight.
Oh, dude, just to go to war, like just to do a one-man war on crime. And even when he's like chasing those dudes down, and I think they hit a pedestrian. He's like, they just killed an innocent.
I'm taking him down. Yeah, this
and they're
escalated.
like, oh, do you need backup? And he's like, no.
Yeah,
and
that
he's
was cool.
like, oh, fuck.
He's much cooler.
Way cooler and way more understated.
Yeah.
Like, it's not all Stallone, Like,
So
it's
basically, in a nutshell, like this one is a much more streamlined story. He takes down these guys who he's chasing, and then it's just like a high speed pursuit. He notices that they're doing a drug that slows down their perception of time. And he gets called into the judge's office, and they're like, "Hey, this person who technically failed by 3%, but she's a psychic, and we're gonna have you field trainer for one day and see what you think."
And actually, to your question from before, where would like a Judge Death or a Judge Fear, Mortis, like all the dark judges fit in? Honestly, I think that this movie, even though on the one hand it is much more realistic, it also touches on these mutants. Yeah, like it touches on people with abilities.
I've watched this movie a ton, so this is a movie that's on constant rotation. And every time I watch this movie, I text you. I'm like, I'm watching Dredd again, and you text me quite often when you watch it. So it's one of these movies that you and I have talked hours about. It's funny, like I kind of forgot about the psychic aspect of it. So going into this, I was kind of like, honestly, with the Stallone one, I thought that would be the one where you would see the judges, I could see Judge Death going, because they did have the angels, and they did have the robots, and they have the flying city. Like, it is much more comic booky, but this one has psychics.
Throwing in all the shit. They were just throwing in everything they could throw in. And I think in this one, it would actually make more sense if you had like a weird supernatural, extra dimensional presence, Like, this of the two movies, this is the only one that has people with powers, and she uses them amazingly throughout the movie.
Sense.
Like, oh yeah, like it doesn't even take you out of the movie. Like, you're never like, what the fuck? They're psychic people. Like, you're drawn into it.
So basically, he's kind of like, this doesn't make sense. She failed. Like, and he tries to scare like 1 in 5 people do not make it past their first day as a judge.
Yeah.
Tries to scare her, and then he's kind of like, "Where's your helmet?" She's like, "It interrupts my powers." And he's like, "Oh, bullet to the head will interrupt your powers too." But he's not like, he's not saying it like how
it's not all shitty. It's not super smug.
It's not
whatever.
like he's not saying it like a joke. It's just like, this is the world that we live in, and like I've seen some shit like.
And I really appreciated the way they set it up when he his job is to take her out, right? Like, take her to a crime, and all of these potential locations pop up, right? And he's like, pick one, doesn't matter. Like,
well, and then he gives the stats, and he's like,
a bunch of shit happens in Mega City 1 every day.
He says that there's 17,000 crimes a day. 17,000
where they go
major
does not
crimes.
Matter.
Major crimes. So it's more than that. They only respond to 6%. And I did the math. That's about 1,000 crimes that the judges get to.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
And like, it doesn't matter where they go. And it kind of echoes too, where like, later in the movie when they send the corrupt judges to take them out or whatever, and it's like, it's a meat grinder. And it's like, yeah, dude, it is. But like, if you're going into this job thinking that you're going to make a real difference, you're not.
Yeah.
This movie is way more bleak.
More realistic. Like, there's no flying cars. They're all just in vehicles. You do see.
The city looks like a city of the future where it's just super dense and shitty, right? Like, it's not like, oh, well, in the future we're going to have flying cars and neon and pools on rooftops. And like, no, it's all going to be
It's
shit.
just going to be getting worse because they're overpopulated.
There's not enough food. This is also of the two movies, like, in like, so Rob Schneider like hides out in the food robot.
Recycled food is good for the environment and okay for you.
So in the Karl Urban Dredd movie, after he cleans up, like after he deals with the guys from the van, he's like, Dredd to control. We need medical assistance, and
I love that.
Two bodies for Recyc. Recyc in the Dredd universe is taking human bodies to be processed into food for human consumption.
Shit, I didn't know that.
Like, Recyc is not cool.
Well, I like that. Well, in addition to that, partly so like, 2 bodies for Recyc. And then you see like the robot like cleaning up the floor, and then like there's an announcement like the shopping mall will be open in 30 minutes. So this is like, multiple
Like,
people
this happens
just
at the mall several times a day. Yeah.
2 innocents, the bad guy.
Yeah, also the cops just shot a flare into a guy's skull.
So Stallone blew up that car. This was like the one part of the movie that I felt like Dredd, played by Karl Urban, didn't show restraint. Like, it seemed like cruel and unusual to do that. And he's like, I said hot shot. And then, you know, it was cool to demonstrate the gun, but it seemed like totally unnecessary. And with that kind of thing, it didn't kill him instantly. Like, he could have still shot the hostage.
Like, it felt like he was trying to shoot a guy in the mouth.
Yeah. Like, if there was that rationale, but he shot the guy in the mouth. It slowly burned him. Like, he could have...
From the inside of his head out.
He could have still killed that hostage. So that bothered me a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the plot is Anderson...
It's the raid. Like, it would be unfair if we did not compare this movie to the raid.
It totally is. That's exactly what I was going to say. They get into it. Mama is the big gang leader, and it's just...
Leader of the Mama clan. But, like, her whole deal is so much more interesting than Rico, right? Like, she was abused. She was a prostitute or something. Isn't that what they say?
So she was a prostitute.
Like, rose to power.
And then a pimp knifed her face. So she bit his dick off and became her own gang leader, and then basically invented a drug and took over an entire building block by block.
Oh, yeah. She's totally bad to the bone.
Yeah, she was really cool. And, like, the world that she set up, like, I really liked. Tore that guy's eyes out, and then, like, he had, like, these cybernetic robot eyes for controlling. That was pretty cool. That was Domhnall Gleeson, who's been in everything recently.
General Hux.
General Hux. He was in Revenant. He was in Harry Potter. He was in Ex Machina.
I think Dredd was the springboard for him, honestly.
I'd like to think so.
I do too. That thought gives me comfort.
So I guess we can just head into, like, we'll go into some specific scenes in a bit, but going into the Dredd himself, like you said earlier, it's much more understated. It's much less smug. It's very much like he is doing this job. He knows that he's not making a difference, but he has to do it.
And also, I love it when it's revealed that Anderson is psychic, and she senses Dredd in the room, and she says she feels anger and control.
Yeah,
right. Like, and I think that's like, yeah. I mean, that really you get the exposition of the entire character of that is Dredd in this movie, right? Like, he's got a lot of rage problems, you know, but it's tempered by the law.
And he's a very he's a weapon.
Oh, definitely, 100%.
What I liked about, like, this one, like, I know in the comic books they only show Dredd's face, like, in flashbacks from, like, his childhood and teens.
They show some of that, or they'll show him. I think he had some
reconstructive surgery
to go undercover, but no, you don't get his full face. You know,
and in this you don't get it either. The Karl Urban grimace. The scowl.
Way better.
Oh, way better.
Way better. And I think it's Karl Urban versus Stallone's vanity, right? Like, Karl Urban doesn't need his whole face in a movie. So, he's Karl Urban.
Karl Urban is, I think, one of the most underrated, underappreciated actors out there. Like, anytime I watch a movie and I see him on there in the movie, I instantly like that movie better. I loved him in Pathfinder. I loved him in Red. I loved him. I loved him in this. He was in Lord of the Rings. There was a point where he was in consideration to be Thor, and even though he's not a big guy, I was like, I'm for it.
He's from New Zealand, right?
I'm not sure where he's from, but
I think he's from New Zealand.
He's something. He's from somewhere.
He's from somewhere.
For
Definitely
sure.
From somewhere. I would bet money on New Zealand. Based on his personality alone and how I feel about him,
you think he's a Kiwi?
New Zealand. I think he's a Kiwi. And that makes me like him.
All right. So going into the world a little bit more, like we said, we've kind of went into it already. It's a little bit more bleak. So there was a lot of weird drone, like not weird, but like drone shots and everything, which was cool.
But it
look
appears
at
on the screen
like
that
the
it is
traffic,
from drones.
There wasn't very much traffic for like a city that's supposed to be as populated as it is. I was like, that's not so bad. Like, I live in LA and the traffic was not as bad.
Maybe that many people don't have cars.
I guess.
Like, it's a fucking hell world. Like, I don't know. I bought it, and I like that they acknowledged, like I think in the, you know, when they put up like the heads up display shit or whatever, like it says like drone cam 3 or I don't remember what number it was, but like it definitely acknowledges that the police force is using drones to surveil this area, which extends, I think it's from like Boston to Washington D.C. or something.
It's
like
one mega city
huge,
one,
yeah, and it's all concrete and it's all buildings, and they did a better job too of making it like a mishmash of existing structures versus the mega blocks, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's buildings that existed, and then there's future buildings built kind of over the top of them, you know? And I really liked the way they did, once they get stuck in peach trees, like the building is equipped to do like a war mode where it all shuts down, right? Like the blast shields come up, and like all of those, they're
like those buildings
built
would
to
need
withstand
to have
nuclear
that.
war. Yeah, like the rest of America has been bombed out to shit, and so new structures would. It makes sense that they could lock down an entire building, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we haven't talked about this very much, but I feel it was great. Like, I don't really have any particular scenes. Like, there was just a few notes that I had, like, just little things that are kind of funny. Like, that minigun scene was really cool. They had, like, three miniguns, and they just destroyed an entire floor, and he uses explosive round, and he blows out a wall, and there's just, like, a skate park 70. They said they were on floor at least 75, because they mentioned that the elevator didn't work except for 75 and above.
Yeah.
So from 75 to 200 stories, there's a skate park out there. Like, that was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
I did like the Anderson psychic scene, like when she's like battling the gang member.
The guy.
And
yeah.
like
Avon Barksdale from The Wire.
Yep.
I don't know his real name.
So he like is like, my fucked up head beats your fucked up head any day, and he's trying to like dominate her and like act like he's gonna rape her, and then goes with it like she's gonna like go down on him, and then she's like, that's not me, and then he looks down and it's Lena Headley, and she like bites off his dick, and then she just like dominates his mind and gets all the information, and then he pisses himself.
She gets him right in his fucking mind. Fuck that guy.
And that was great.
That also has the scene with Dredd. I think you see Dredd, and then behind him is like a tattered American flag.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they're in that room, and like she's going nuts on his mind, and he's just like staring him down because he's trying to beat the shit out of him. Like he's trying to beat information out of him physically, and then she goes into his mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was really cool. The other thing that I really, really, really loved is, just to contrast with the Stallone movie, is the delivery of the I am the law line, where in this one, Dredd is alone, right? Like I think Anderson has been taken from him, right? They have her captive. He's alone. He patches into the building's PA system and announces to everyone there, where he's just like, "Mama's not the law. I'm the law." And it's like, it's a whisper. It's not this weird,
it's not
super
just yelling,
big dick
it's
yelling.
Just a statement of fact.
Of fact.
And then he goes floor by floor. And then those three
kills everyone.
He kills not just everyone, like all the criminals. He also kills like 3 judges.
Oh yeah, and it's just like, dude, if you're not with me, stay the fuck in your apartment.
Well, yeah,
because I will kill you.
And then like when that first judge comes up to him, he's like, "You didn't ask about Anderson. You're a bad guy," and fucks him, like breaks his neck. I loved his kit with like it,
because they also built it up to where he was like running out of ammunition, and like using the corrupt judges to
restock.
Make a great scene in the movie, and also resupply your hero with more bullets was perfect. It was seamless, and I really appreciated that.
You know what scene I really liked, and it wasn't even one of the main action set pieces, but right when they went into lockdown and they decided that they were going to try to go to that med bay and get that guy to help them. Like at first they were just like, we're going to find one place to defend, and then that guy's like, we're not going to let you in. But on their way there, he's like, call it, like, we're going up or going down. It's basically the same thing. So let's just keep going. So like gas grenades, put the ventilators on, and they go, and it's just precision, just pop, 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 pop,
bam,
like
bam,
just
bam,
bam. There was no wasted shots. He never missed. He never
like
in the Stallone one. He goes rapid fire, and he just goes across the room, shooting through walls.
It's
and takes
super tactical.
Everything in this is tactical. Like, he does not miss. And he even says it later on. He goes, "We're running low on ammo. Do not shoot unless you know you're gonna hit." And they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. They hit every time. So like, I really liked that. The world we've already kind of talked about. I don't have anything more to say about this movie. Like, the only if I'm going to be talking about this movie, is I'm just going to keep saying it's cool.
The last part would be the design, the aesthetic of it, which is, I mean, we touched on it being way more bleak. We touched on it being much more tactical in terms of the costumes. Like, everything had a function in this one. There was no extra bullshit just because it looked cool.
Yeah, there was no chase sequence that, with the flying motorcycle. There was no just hand-to-hand brawl combat, just jumping off of buildings or going through a flaming hallway. It was just,
and it was very human in a weird, like it. I felt in this movie the Dredd you get is a heavily armored cop, but he's still a cop. you know? Like, this is just a man.
And he did have a small arc, not a huge arc, but at the end, it was really risky. So the climax of the movie is he gets to Mama. They kill everybody. She ends up putting like this device on her wrist that syncs to her heartbeat. And so if she dies, the building blows. So she has enough like dynamite to take out the top 50 floors, which will collapse it all. And he's like, fuck it.
Yeah.
He like he's like, I'll chance. Did you put in any thought into how far that range is? And he shoots her and then gives her a huge like a huge dose of the slow-mo. And they say somewhere in that sort of perception of time is 4% of real time. So and so he throws her down and he takes the chance that it's not gonna blow up.
Well, two things about that though. One, I love that he throws her down. It doesn't collapse the whole building, and he's just like, yeah. like that's his only reaction to it. Does. And then the other thing is the violence that they use in the slow-mo, like, because it is slowed down, is artistic. It's beautiful.
Like the shot through the cheek.
The way and the way like the blood like erupts from
and the
people,
light hits it and glistens.
Yeah, and it's really sparkly. Like, I don't know, man. Like
it works.
It's like nothing else. Like it. You know what it really reminded me of was like, I mean, you remember like music videos? Like, remember music videos?
I do
were
remember
a thing
music.
that
I
you
used
could
to
watch?
go home and watch TRL when I was in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Or like pop-up video or whatever, where like they had like 2 minutes for a song to make like some cool visual shit happen. And like I felt like a lot of the slow-mo deaths were like that kind of aesthetic, you know, where it's just like, oh, we're gonna burst a skull, but like the way it explodes is captivating. You know, it's like a kaleidoscope kind of like.
You know what I really liked? I think my favorite Dredd moment in it, and it was really so right after they did like the minigun scene where they destroyed everything, and then they come back out. They're like, well, we're gonna have to go back in the building. We can't stay out, you know, here. They're gonna come for us. So he tells Anderson to like take the guy somewhere, and so he goes and he finds like a henchman. He looks at Mama across the way. And just chucks the guy over the edge and then walks back into the mist. Good. Like it's just like the fog from the rubble, and he just walks away just slow. I thought that was such a cool shot.
He's just like, fuck you, bitch. He just tosses that guy over and is like, you didn't kill me.
I've got nothing else to say about this movie. I could talk about this movie for hours and just scene by scene. I love the scene at the end, you know, when they just ask about Anderson, like she's like, I lost him. Like she lets Gleason go, and he's like, "You can't do that." And she's like, "I already failed. Like I'm still in charge. I'm letting him go." And then they go through everything, and then the Supreme Judge is like, "What do you think?" She's like, "She's a pass." And like that's just like that's it. And then he has like another little thing like, "Yep, this world sucks, but I'm gonna keep doing it." Kind of narration.
So in the comics, like the way it works is they have like the judges are like round the clock judges, right? Like they're on the streets all the time. So I you know, I'm sure if we have any listeners that know more than me, they'll correct me. But the way it works is like the judges sleep in like these pods where like an hour equates to a full night's sleep, right? So they're always on the street. Like there's no real downtime for the judges in that kind of in the Mega City 1 universe, right? They're not off the street for very long, so they're always out there doing this. And I think that's what I loved so much about this movie was if that were your life, where you got a simulated 8 hours sleep for 1 hour, and you're out there doing this job that you know makes no difference. Like you're not gonna get to a point where like, oh yeah, crime is down in Mega City 1. Like you're never gonna have that. Like that's just not part of it. So like what makes the Dredd character in this movie so amazing is like he's just into it. He this is all he knows. This is all he could do. He couldn't go like, oh, just have a regular job. Like he likes fucking fighting for his life all the time.
So I think we just need to, you know, go through and say, you know, final thoughts, like whether or not this movie, because the Judge Dredd just Dredd 2012 is the remake, is the reboot. I love this movie, and
I love it as well.
But going through and rewatching these, like I think the Stallone one worked as much as it was just a Stallone set piece.
I think they both have a place.
They both have a place. They're both drastically different interpretations. I'm glad this movie got made.
I would say to anyone wanting to get like into Judge Dredd, if you don't know what the character is about or what the world is about, like you have two great examples, like great introductory pieces to watch.
So like
watch them both. You'll love them both.
Ultimately, this is like I think you said this with Shin Godzilla. Like this was a movie that I would have never asked for, but glad that I got. And this is one of the first movies in a long time.
I'll tell you honestly, I didn't know this movie, the Karl Urban movie, was a movie until it was in theaters.
There wasn't a lot of advertising
no hype
for it.
There was nothing that built it up, and then I was like, "Oh shit, Dredd! That's a movie. I have to go see that." And then my wife and I did, and we're like, "Holy shit, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my life."
This was a movie that I saw with my friend. So my friend who passed away a couple months ago from a car accident. This was the last thing I did with him before I moved to San Francisco. So it has a pretty dear spot in my heart because it was one of the last things I did with my friend. So I definitely think this movie has its merits. I definitely think they both should exist. This is one of the first movies in a long time that I'm like, I really want to see a sequel. I hope it gets a sequel. It doesn't need one. It stands on its own. And Karl Urban, I think the other thing...
I just want more. I
think what other also makes this is Karl Urban loved this role. He's been trying to get... He's willing to do it as an Amazon TV show, a Netflix TV show.
It's funny that you bring that up, too, because I would say if you contrast the two movies, it does seem like Karl Urban is enjoying being the character more than Stallone.
I agree.
He's having more fun with the role.
Talking him, the way he talks about it after the fact, like he just seems like he enjoys it. So, I think
definitely, and also Karl Urban. If you're listening to our podcast, you're welcome on it anytime.
Keanu Reeves as well. Karl Urban and Keanu Reeves.
Oh yeah,
open invitations.
Keanu, hit us up, man. Come on, guys. Where are you guys at?
So I think we've talked it to death. Let's move into our news segment. So we've got 2 emails. One, man, I love this question, and it's a perfect time for this question actually. So this is from Alex Ortega. I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions on how action stars have changed compared to the 90s and how it affects the remakes. Example, Stallone to Dredd, Schwarzenegger to Colin Farrell in Total Recall. I think this is a deep question. Like there's so many ways that I can go about this, and I want to give Alex a full answer. So I think what's drastically different between action heroes this day and age and 80s and 90s is when you go back to, I think Tom Cruise kind of started it with Mission Impossible 2, but Bourne gets a lot of credit for it, where it's the new action heroes are not these super ripped guys, but they're these guys who are just good at everything. So we kind of talked about it in Point Break last week. The new Johnny Utah is amazing and an expert in everything. Bourne knows all these languages. He's an expert combat, expert marksmanship. He can hack. He can do everything. I think that's what's kind of changed. Even
sort of, I agree. I think the other thing that's changed though is like you have less ego involved, right? Like you have actors that want to be the character now, so much as being themselves, playing the character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a lot more. Like when you see, it's one of those things when like ever somebody gets cast in a Marvel role, you always see them on like Instagram or Twitter, and it shows them like reading the comic books, like they want to become the character versus warping the character to fit them.
Exactly. Like I think the Stallone Dredd is Stallone
warping
as
the character. Yeah.
Whereas Karl Urban is like, everybody's like, who's Karl Urban? Is he from New Zealand? Who's that guy? Like, I think he might have been in Lord of the Rings. Like, nobody knows who that dude is. But then he devotes himself to the role, and it's what the viewers get out of it is amazing.
I think the other thing is coming out of the 80s and 90s where it was super macho, just muscles, like bodybuilders becoming, and wrestlers. So you have Stallone, and Stallone and Schwarzenegger being like bodybuilders, fitness guys, and then all the wrestlers. You've got Jesse Ventura, Carl Weathers, all these huge, larger than life guys. And moving into the late 90s to 2000s, the perception of what a man has drastically changed as well. Like I don't want to say like metrosexual kind of thing, but softer features, smaller men became.
Ooh.
Like, if that makes it, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, like the definition of macho has changed so much. Like, you don't need to be 6'2", 300
Well,
pounds
I
all
mean,
muscle to be macho
yeah.
now. Like,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what
No.
a man is anymore. So I think that's made a big change. Like, Tom
I think
Cruise could
also
not have
just-
been an action star in the 80s.
You know, I think the other thing too, though, like, is the way, like, you know, being a nerd or a geek or whatever, like, that culture has changed, right? Like, it's shifted to where, like, people, like, it's cool to like comic books. You know, it's cool to geek out on these kind of movies, right? So, really, if you accurately cast a movie like this, like in '95, Stallone is Dredd. Well, we need an action dude to be Dredd, and Stallone's a big name, so we'll put Stallone in there. Whereas now, it's like you can have a Karl Urban. You know, you don't need like this action hero to play the action star. You need someone who's right for the role.
Yeah, so people are more... Well, with the internet and also having the internet be a thing, like fan casting is a thing that's out there.
What the fuck is the internet?
So with fan casting being a thing, you know, there are people who've been cast because the internet's like, oh yeah, this person would be great for it. And then also we're in a world of like superhero movies now, and the whole thing is these people have superpowers, so they don't need to be, you know, super muscular. Like, they're just super strong despite smaller frames. So
and
I think that's
dude, I would
changed.
say that's where those DC movies fucking fall apart, man. Like, cool, we got a Superman that's played by a super jacked dude who sucks at playing Superman.
Yeah.
Like, Superman is not super strong because he's super buff. He's super strong because he's a fucking alien.
Yeah.
Than he is in Earth's yellow sun. He could be a fat piece of shit and still be super strong.
So our second email I got was from Jesus Rodriguez, and he says, "Are you guys planning on reviewing Captain America? If so, would you guys review the 1970 or the 1990 movie and compare it to the 2011 Captain America?"
Wow.
I've seen the 1991. I don't remember there being... I know there's 2 made-for-TV Captain America movies. I've seen one of them. And it's like a rubbery latex suit with a motorcycle helmet. And then, of course, you've got the Chris Evans Marvel MCU ones.
I have not seen those other movies, but to me, there's not another cinematic Captain America.
There's not. I can't... Going into it, we know they're just going to be crap movies. There's no way that...
I mean, the only thing that's crappy about Chris Evans is that he's also Johnny Storm.
And he's
right?
also...
Like,
I can't remember the other character, but he was also in The Losers, which is another comic book movie. So he's done 3 comic book roles.
Well, and just even if you just keep it to the Marvel universe, he has played 2 Marvel characters, which is a little bit weird. But as Captain America, he's
owned the role.
It. Yeah, he's taken charge
I don't
of
think
it.
anybody... It's just like if they were to... no one's going to be Iron Man other than RDJ anymore. If we were to do those movies, like I would be interested in maybe watching those movies just for fun, but I don't think we could do an entire episode on those. We'd just be ripping on how terrible they are versus having any kind of intelligence conversation.
Yeah, I think it'd just be us being assholes, basically. What's strange though, because we were talking about the made for TV. I recently watched It.
Oh, did you?
Like,
did
just
you watch
the
the
other
new
day.
trailer?
I did watch the new trailer, but I also, like, just today, actually, I finished it, watching it, from the made-for-TV one, and so when I was a child, this movie scared the shit out of me. Like, this is a terrifying movie.
I've never actually seen it all the way through. Like, I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen it all the way through.
So for me, and I was able to pin it down this time as a 36-year-old man, that Georgie is one of the main character's younger brother, right? The one that gets his arm ripped off and killed by the It monster. Georgie in that movie bears a shocking resemblance to my actual younger brother. And I think that's why that movie fucked me up so bad. Because he so his older brother makes him this little boat, and he's sick and he can't go out to play with him, and then he puts the boat in the stream and it goes down the hole. And that's all. Yeah, that's all in the trailer, right? But dude, I'm telling you guys, when I was a little kid, I felt like shit. I might send my little brother to his death accidentally. And yeah, that movie is terrifying. So
the trailer, this new trailer looked pretty
Jesus,
scary.
Dude. Oh my god, it looks horrible. And also the clowns, dude.
This clown is way gnarly
clowns.
too.
Like, oh dude, everybody's scared of clowns. We're all, I'm so scared of clowns. Like, everybody's terrified of clowns, but like that's why. Like, for me at least, it is why I'm scared of clowns. I'm also definitely afraid of flying monkeys. So don't ever make me watch a movie, Michael, with flying monkeys.
So no Wizard of Oz.
No, God.
Okay,
Oh, dude, I can't deal with it.
So it was the thing that I was going to bring up with the new trailer. I thought it was a really cool trailer. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Spider-Man trailer just came out, and I just kind of wanted to, I'm a huge Spider-Man. I've got thousands of Spider-Man
you love
comic
Spider-Man.
books.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot to say about it, but I kind of wanted to hear your impressions on it, and then I'll just say my 2 cents.
So I like the look of it. There's a lot I like a lot more than I don't. I guess the only thing that really kind of creeps me out about it is like that Tony Stark is so like on board with Spider-Man, because it kind of seems molestery.
The problem that I have with it
in a
is
weird
not
way that he appears in his bedroom and is like sitting on his. Well, this was in
Civil War.
The last, yeah, where he's like in his room and he's totally ignoring Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, who's super hot.
No, he mentions it several times that she's hot.
I'd rather talk to your adopted child or whatever. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and then it seems a little creepy why Tony Stark is so interested in a teenage Spider-Man.
It didn't really make sense that he goes and gets a teenager in Civil War. The problem that I have with the Robert Downey Jr., not Robert Downey Jr., but the Iron Man, Spider-Man thing as a Spider-Man fan is what made me relate to Peter Parker and Spider-Man as a child. Like, I've been reading his comic books since I was 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
I stopped about 4 or 5 years. Actually, it's been longer than that. When they dissolved the marriage of him and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
I grew up in low income housing, and Peter Parker, has always struggled with money. If he tore his costume, he would have to put a patch in it. There was entire runs where he would break one web shooter and have to function off of one, or he wouldn't be able to get the chemicals.
And as a child, you had to make all of your own
I made my own Spider-Man toys where I had a Power Ranger toy that I put like a water balloon on one of those things.
Web shooters.
So
this wasn't like you could just go to Walmart and buy a web shooter.
No, I couldn't do it.
You guys, Michael had to craft his own. He had a hard life.
I used floss to do it. So my big problem with it is, from the very beginning, he is financed by a billionaire, and it takes a huge part away of who the character is.
This is also why we need you guys to support us on Patreon, so that Michael can make his own web shooters for once in his life.
So, like, his webs do some weird things. Like, there's one in the scene, like, he has a web that splits into two. There's another thing where he sprays a web at a car, and then a bad guy walks by it, and then it shoots off the car.
He clearly has Iron Man tech.
And so that kind of bothers me quite a bit. But overall, it looks fun. I think Tom Holland.
The kid's great, right?
Is great.
I mean, yeah.
That kid, he actually pops up a lot in my Instagram feeds and stuff because, like, I look at Spider-Man stuff and
because you just like him.
Yeah, I like him as a man.
I got the same for Karl Urban, so don't worry about it.
He has all these things. Like, he was a gymnast and a dancer before, so he's by far the most accurate Spider-Man in terms of being able to do a lot of stuff. The most beautiful Spider-Man. So
don't worry about it, dude. I got Jason Momoa on my Instagram.
But yeah, I think it's gonna be really good. I'm glad that with the newest trailer and this one, there's a part where Tony Stark is like, "I want the costume back. You don't deserve it." And I'm hoping that by the end of the movie, Peter Parker's kind of like, I want to make it my own. I want to do my own stuff. Thank you, but from here on, like, I'll do my own repairs. Don't worry about it, and I'll be cool with that.
Yeah.
And the last bit of news I have, and it's just kind of a minor thing, it just came out today. Samuel Jackson is going to star in the Blob remake.
Whoa, cool! That's really cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they just announced it today. So he actually mentioned this back before Kong was filmed, saying that he loved like those movies as a kid. He loved the werewolf or the not werewolf movie.
And I didn't mention it on the Kong Skull Island episode. But I was really hoping that he would die in a similar fashion as he did in Deep Blue Sea.
Giving a speech.
Yeah. He was like, we got to work together or whatever, Yeah, I was really...
That's a great movie.
That seemed like a
I would love for them to make...
Deep Blue Sea is a great movie.
I would love for them to remake Deep Blue Sea just so we can talk about it.
I could talk about Deep Blue Sea for ages.
Yeah, I mean,
that's an incredible movie.
All right, so I think we're done. So you guys can follow us on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at MDXpods. Dustin mentioned Patreon already, patreon.com/MDXpods.
Michael needs web shooters.
And so in addition to the web shooters, I would like to get
and microphones.
Microphone stands and everything like that. But yeah, if you guys can help us out with that. If you can't spare any change or anything, please like us, tweet anything, share our content if you like this episode.
I mean, if you're like the people living in Mega City 1, we get it. You can't spare anything. It's a hard life out there. It's hot in the streets. But if you can, we would definitely appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.